Josh, welcome to the show.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for reaching out. Super excited.
And I'm so grateful to be doing this with you. And I'm really looking forward to just learning about your story and talking about it and asking you some questions and getting into it. Let's talk about your journey as a producer. You started quite a while back, I think
Hmm.
around five.
Yeah.
So we can go back as far as you would like in terms of your musical journey. So I'll let you kind of lead the way. But yeah, let's go through what that journey looks like.
I guess I could start off from like the basics, right? I've been playing drums, bass, and piano since I was a little kid. My parents had me in lessons when I was like 5, 6 years old on all of them. I'm classically trained in drums, bass, and piano. And so just growing up, I've always played in like jazz bands. I played in rock bands, contemporary bands, played like for some hip hop acts and stuff like that growing up. And that was probably up until my teen years when I just realized that like dealing with bands and dealing with other people's personalities and egos was just like, it was a headache. It was kind of starting to become a chore, and I was like not into it. And I was exposed to, I guess, dubstep and drum and bass at a very early age. And that was probably around the same time when I was like starting to get out of my band phase. And I had a friend, or who is also my collab partner with my Wires project, Renee, who was like a mentor to me. He was able to like, let me shadow him in the studio and like learn a lot of production knowledge and get a lot of engineering skills and things that I just didn't have, and like learn how to work in a DAW like Logic and Ableton. He really showed me the groundwork for that. And after that, it was just kind of like, yeah, screw the band thing. I could play all the instruments and do all the things by myself. So I got into production. Since high school, pretty much, I've been producing like drum and bass music, dubstep. Maybe about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I decided that I'm going to start the Famburglar project. Previously, before Famburglar, I was doing stuff under another alias as Accelerator. And then I went to Famburglar. And when I launched Famburglar, I was like, hey, I'm only going to do house and like breaks and like booty breaks, super party club music. And been doing that for probably about 5 years, 6 years now. And just up until recently, I've been starting to dabble back with drum and bass and getting drum and bass releases under my belt as Famburglar. And I don't know, it's kind of just like true to my roots. And I'm just like, not that I got bored of house music or breaks, because I love partying and love having good house music and good house vibes and getting down at the woogie and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm a junglist at heart. Drum and bass is my cup of tea, and I circled back to it, and I kind of feel like that's just where my artist's, like, I don't know, my artist vision has led me up until now. Like all my experience has led me to this point of being like, yeah, I want to do drum and bass. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. So what was that like for you? What was that moment, or was there a moment where you felt like drum and bass was really it?
I was probably in my junior or senior year of high school, and my brother was showing me some like Noisia and like Icicle tracks, and I was like, wow, all this bass music is really, really dope. And I started like just doing my own digging and research, and like I just wanted to see what artists I like, and I started finding artists like Alex Perez, Lensman, Seba, Eveson, like a bunch of dope liquid drum and bass artists. And I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And I come from a jazz background. So I was like, wow, this is it. Like this, like beautiful music, but also bass heavy. And you could still party to, and you could play at a daytime rave, but you could also get down to it in the middle of the night at the function or whatever. And that was it for me. I was like, wow. And the track that did it for me was Crystalline by Noisia.
Crystalline by Noisia.
Yeah, that was the track for me. That was like really set it for me. I'm like, wow, this is the one.
You're like, this is it.
Yeah.
Did you have people around you? You mentioned Renee, right? Who
Yeah.
was sort of showing you the ropes.
Yeah. The process of getting what's in here in my head and what I'm feeling into this new software that was pretty much foreign to me. It was like a different language. And so it's like, one, you're learning a new language to figure out how to communicate what you're feeling or what you're trying to showcase. And that was like the biggest part, was learning how to do that process. And then after that, he didn't really get into too much engineering stuff because he didn't want to overload me with it. Because it was like, first, just be able to get your idea out, get your idea onto paper. Once you could do that, then you could figure out the engineering stuff afterwards. He's like, and if you can't figure it out, I'll sit there and I'll help you, and I'll show you how to mix down your track. I'll show you how to master your track. And being part of Big Booty Bass, I was surrounded with other producers. He was in another group called Chronology, which is also Slogan and IO. And so Nick Slogan, he showed me a lot of stuff too, because most of the time when I was in the studio with Renee, Slogan was right there too. And, he was teaching me really dope tricks. And those guys are both really well-known producers. They've released on Technique Records, with Drum Sound and Bassline Smith. And so like, they definitely know what the fuck they're doing. It couldn't have been a better place to be able to shadow two of like my closest friends.
So then you had people around you who were in the drum and bass scene.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in high school, Big Booty Bass was already throwing drum and bass parties. I was a young kid going to these cool warehouse parties, listening to this underground music that like none of my other friends were doing. And I was like always like the younger guy hanging out with older kids, like who are all into like, rave culture.
Yeah, man. I wish I had found it that young. I would have been all over it.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate to be able to have been exposed to that at a very young age. I mean, even like I come from a family that has worked in the entertainment industry. And one of my first concerts that my mom ever took me to was at the Hollywood Bowl, and it was Basement Jaxx, Felix the House Cat, Röyksopp, Jamiroquai, and another like pretty legendary act. And I was just like, at the time, I was like probably like 8 years old or 9 years old. And like my mom took me to a concert like that, and I had no clue what's going on. Now that I'm older and I look back at it, I'm like, I was 8 years old. I should have not been there, first of all. But I'm like super glad that I got exposed to stuff like that, because I got to experience really dope music at a high level at a very young age.
Amazing. So then did you know from a pretty early age that you wanted to be involved in music in some capacity?
Yeah, for the most part, growing up, it was either going to be music or sports. I played baseball growing up, and I was like, I'm either going to dive into this and do the whole college thing in baseball, or I'm going to, dive full-heartedly into music. And in my freshman year college, I tore my hamstring, and like I never really mentally recovered from that. And that kind of like helped me make a decision of like going full force into music. I was just like, I didn't mentally recover from my injury. And I was just like, yeah, I guess I'm not going to be able to perform at 100%. And I went through like this weird dark depression phase where I was like disappointed in myself. And also like all this stuff I worked for my whole entire life, playing sports up until now, just got like ruined. And I'm like, well, at least I have music to fall back on. And it was easy to make that decision. Or I don't know, I guess life kind of threw me to make that decision the hard way.
Yeah. So then from there, music was a pretty obvious outlet or way maybe to process that, would you say?
Yeah, it definitely was, because that was probably around the time where I was like already at the end of Accelerator project, and I was realizing I'm going to do this music thing a little bit more seriously. And that was like, okay, I need to refresh and start a new brand and focus on branding and do the social media thing the right way and stuff like that. And that's where Famburglar kind of started.
So yeah, I know you as Famburglar. I'm always curious to know the story behind the name. Can you tell us the story of Famburglar?
Yeah, it was just like an inside joke between homies, just stemming off the Hamburglar. We're like, oh, he's the Hamburglar. It's like, oh, no, he's Fam. Oh, okay, he's the Famburglar. And like, that's just like, it was just friends being dumb, saying dumb shit. And I was just like, I'm gonna take this. This is fun.
Sick. That's how the best ones are made.
Yeah, I wish I could say like it's some crazy story. Like I had some crazy epiphany. Like I was out like at a festival and like had this epiphany. Like, no, it's nothing crazy like that. It's just friends being dumb.
That works too. So then you started down the music path. You're making drum and bass at that point?
Yeah, I was making drum and bass at that point, probably for maybe 3-4 years, somewhere around there. And then that's when I was like, yeah, the booty breaks thing is where I'm at, because at that point, Big Booty Bass was already starting to incorporate house music into our parties and our shows. It was usually only drum and bass or like bass music. And then when we started to do a second stage at our parties, we started to incorporate house music, break beats, stuff in the 120, 130 range of BPM. And I was like, wow, well, I have an outlet for it. I'm part of this crew that throws this really dope party, and we're starting a label. This is like the perfect platform for me to be able to do this. And it was just the basis of me being able to start Famburglar the easiest way. Very thankful that I had the platform for it, because, it's really hard nowadays. You could have great content, but if your branding isn't there and your brand identity isn't there, your content might get overlooked. So that was a pivot point for me. It was just like, I have the platform. I have the support of this amazing team behind me. I have the content. I got to rebrand.
What did that process look like? Was that a pretty clear path in what you needed to do?
Yeah, for the most part, it was definitely super easy for me to figure out. Famburglar already is like a super fun, playful name. It's like a twist on, nostalgia if you grew up in America and know McDonald's. My music was super fun and party music. So I'm like, this is just going to be a fun brand, not something that you look at and it's like, oh, that's a super serious brand, like a super black and white techno brand. That wasn't what I was going for. I wanted the super playful, like California palm trees. Like you could be at the side of a pool drinking a mimosa or something like that. That was kind of the visual representation vibe that I wanted to go for.
Hell yeah. And you just released Feelings EP.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So truth be told, I'm a sucker for pop music. I'm a sucker for cheesy vocals. I'm a sucker for catchy hooks. I listen to a lot of R&B. I listen to a lot of pop music. People are probably like, oh, you're a bass head. And you see my playlist of listening history and you're like, that doesn't represent the type of music you make. And so I don't know. I've always been a sucker for that type of stuff. And I've always wanted to have a bridge between drum and bass and pop culture and pop music. And I felt this is like a perfect way to do it with this EP, be able to get some of my favorite pop songs and put my twist on them and bring in elements of liquid, elements of jungle, showcase music that you wouldn't normally hear on the radio. I got a lot of inspiration from Don Wall and Mohican Sun. They have done a lot of really dope bootlegs that are pop music. And I got really inspired by that. And I'm like, wow, I really like the way they executed this. And there's a part of me that wants to cater to my audience, my fan base, but I also want to be able to reach new audience. And people who listen to pop music traditionally don't listen to drum and bass music. And people who technically listen to drum and bass music usually aren't listening to the, top 40 pop stuff. So if I could bridge that gap and find a way to mesh them, that was like my goal with this EP. And I have so many bootlegs of pop songs, like Sampha songs, LMI, I have Dua Lipa. Yeah, I have, the list goes on of like a bunch of pop stuff. And I'm like, okay, these are my favorite ones. These are the ones that are going on this EP.
Hell yeah. Well, firstly, congrats. I think you did an amazing job with it. I love bridging that gap, making that bubble, that drum and bass bubble, a bit bigger.
Yeah,
any way we can. So that's so cool. That's so cool to hear.
This is the type of stuff that my mom, me and my brother, we've been listening to EDM and bass music for a really long time, and she's been around it, and we bump it with her when she's around. She really loves drum and bass, and she really likes liquid drum and bass. And I was like, if I can get my mom to dance to some cool music that she might recognize from the radio, and it's drum and bass, I'm kind of doing something right, because my mom is obviously not in the drum and bass scene, but she knows good music when she listens to good music. And she was like, oh my God, mijo, this is really good. I really like this. It's like very smooth and sexy. Like, what is this called? I'm like, oh, this is liquid drum and bass, Mom. She's like, oh yeah, that's the one I like. I'm like, yeah, you do. I'm like, yeah, you do.
Yes. I love it. So your mom is officially a junglist?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've caught her. I've gone into her car before, and she's like listening to like a Lensman mix, and I'm like, okay, all right, I see you. Like, I didn't even send this mix to you. Like, you found this on your own. Like, okay.
Amazing. So you named it Feelings. Let's talk about some of the feelings that were involved in the process of making this. What did that look like, and why Feelings?
So I guess to break down the songs, each of them are lovey-dovey songs. Positions by Ariana Grande is a very sexual, sensual song about sexuality kind of. And with Dua Lipa, her song Break My Heart is talking about falling in love with someone who you're afraid to fall in love with this person because they might be the person that breaks your heart. And that's like some real shit. And like, I've gone through some tough breakups in the past, and I don't know, I just felt like this was something that I could really embody and encompass into my music. And the Dua Lipa one specifically, I've been sitting on that track since it came out like almost a year ago. When I heard that track, it just resonated with me really well. And I was like, I would love to hear this in a drum and bass track. The Georgia Smith song, On My Mind, I love Georgia Smith, and I saw the concert series Tiny Desk, and I saw hers, and I was like, wow, she's an amazing vocalist, and these vocals would sound very sexy on drum and bass. And when I listen to all these songs, it's kind of like nostalgic, right? When you listen to a really good love song or like a really good R&B song, you kind of relate it to some sort of experience that you've had, whether it's like a past relationship, a fling. You start to go through memories and you start to feel emotions. These three songs, I chose them specifically because they embodied me to feel things that maybe necessarily I didn't want to feel, or that I needed to feel to either process my emotions or just like have nostalgia and be able to think back on like a better time or a good time that I had to experience in life. And that was something that I wanted to embody with that. And that's why I said that this EP would be called Feelings, because all three of them kind of had different emotions behind it. One is all about sexuality and being sensual with your lover. Another one's being afraid of loving someone because you might be heartbroken. And the other one is talking about how this person is on your mind all the time and how do you deal with letting them go and stuff like that. And so that was like, the emotions that they made me feel. And I was hoping that, people can kind of relate to that in some way, and obviously I didn't write the vocals to these, but, I can only showcase them in a new way for people to experience those same emotions.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say there's more than a few people who have been in the same boat or felt very similarly. So then did you start knowing that you were going to name it Feelings and that was really going to be the theme of the album?
Not necessarily. I had about 6 tracks that I was going to choose from. And when I was going through them, these are the 3 that stood out to me the most. And once I like realized, oh, these are on the softer side of the emotions, I was listening to a lot of Snow Allegra, and she has that album. It's called Those Feels Again. And I was just like, wow, like, yeah, when you hear the right song and you're just like, oh, those feels again. And I was like, oh, feelings. And it's kind of clicked. It's funny. I was watching her Tiny Desk too. I watch Tiny Desk all the time.
Tiny Desk.
I'll send you some links. It's a NPR series, and they have a bunch of big name artists come in, and they do like these stripped back acoustic sets of their music, and it's like really dope. Like there's one of T-Pain, and he's like doing like Buy You a Drink acoustic, and it's like he's singing his heart out without any auto tune, and it's like it's amazing. It's like he's so heartfelt singing about a girl stripping or buying her a drink. It's like it's really funny.
Love it.
Like the whole entire series is really great, and I feel like, you know, if you're really into like music and you want some good inspiration, it's really dope to see people do these acoustic sets and have like a very intimate venue. There's a lot of dope fucking concerts and stuff on there. I mean, they have everybody, like people like Anderson .Paak, Tyler the Creator, Adele, Paramore, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Sick.
Yeah.
So why do you make music?
Ooh, deep question. Deep. Why do I make music? I feel like that's changed over the years. I feel like currently the reason why I make music is because I really feel that I want to express myself in this industry and place that I've kind of created as a home for myself. I really like to think of myself as someone who's really involved in the community, the bass scene, whether that's drum and bass or just the bass music scene or even the house music scene. And I feel like it would be a waste for all my talents that I've accumulated over the years, you know, stuff that my parents have invested into me for, stuff that I've invested into myself, time that I've invested. I feel like it would just be a waste to not be doing something musical. I've even thought about doing stuff on the back end of the music industry, working in like music business and stuff like that. And there's no satisfaction in that. I know that sounds kind of selfish, but when I work on music and I release music and people tell me that they can connect with my music, there's something about that, right? Where it's reassuring that what I'm doing is right, but also that there's people out there that are receptive to my art and can appreciate it for what it is and can have a really good time with it. And that's something that I think is very important. Artist affirmation, you know, making sure that you're like on the right path and that you're doing the right things and that your content is up to par with your peers. Like I said, I grew up very competitive, so there's like a competitive aspect to me too that wants to have friendly competition with friends, and like I want to see my music on charts and stuff like that. So like for me, kind of selfish, and I guess that's kind of like true artist nature, right? Art is an expression of yourself, expressing what you feel, expressing what you are interpreting in life and through your experiences, and hoping that someone can relate to it. And if it brings happiness to their life, if it brings joy to their life, shit. I mean, if your art is meant to make someone feel sad and it makes them feel sad, then you did your job, you know, as an artist. It just depends on what the nature of your content is. And I think that's like something that's very beautiful. Over the years, it's taken me a long time to understand that and learn that. When I was younger, I felt like my musical drive was really driven from my parents and like that I owed them something because of how much they invested into me. And as I gotten older and like I got out of my band phase, that was when like I realized like I'm doing this for myself. I think that whole transition of like leaving the band and dealing with other people and focusing on working with myself, I had to do a lot of self-development as a human being, mentally, physically, spiritually. I had to be able to prepare for all those things, and that in itself is like artistry. And I think trying to tackle that and trying to overcome that as an artist and like dealing with the artist struggle every day on a daily basis, I enjoy that. I feel like if I don't have the ups and downs of being an artist, life's pretty boring, just working a 9 to 5 and not having a cool hobby and like an outlet. And that's the one thing I love about music is that for me, it's my hobby, it's my outlet, and I don't take it too seriously, but I take it seriously enough where I can like, you know, accomplish, you know, my goals. And that's like where I'm satisfied. And that's like the bubble that I'm satisfied in.
So it sounds like there was a transition at a certain point where you were doing it more for your parents, and then you recognize that this is really a valuable outlet for yourself. Yeah. Would you say so?
Yeah, that's definitely like exactly where it's at. I felt like I would disappoint my parents if I didn't play in bands or try to travel or try to do something with music. And then at a certain point, I was just like, I guess that's part of like growth and maturity, right? Like you take your parents' opinions with a lot of weight, but at the same time, you're your own person and you're trying to create your own life and you're trying to create your own happiness. And at a certain point, you have to make those tougher decisions and realize what are the things that you want out of life and what are you trying to accomplish. And between leaving the bands and starting to focus on electronic music and production, and then having my injury, going through that dark phase of like depression, it was probably like a solid 6 months where I was like really, really depressed. And I was just like really like prioritizing life and like trying to figure out what things matter to me. And everywhere I looked, everywhere I searched in the deepest nooks and crannies of my life, music was always there. And music was always the thing that got me through it all. And whether I was doing it for the wrong reasons or the right reasons, it was still there. And that was something that I realized. And I was like, yeah, music is what I'm going to do. Like, I have to do this. Like, even if it's a hobby, even if it's for my own self, it needs to be done. It cannot not be done.
That's beautiful. That sounds like a pretty life-changing period of time.
Yeah.
And I hear music was a really big part of that. What else was really valuable during that time and getting through that?
Honestly, weed. Seriously, weed. Weed was probably like the best thing for me during that time. It helped me, one, physically with my injury, but also just like the mental aspect of dealing with like depression during those times. I've never really been one to, not that I knock prescription pills or anything like that, but I've just never been one to like, oh, I would need to go take a pill for my depression. I was just like, no, I just need to fight through this because I just went through some traumatic shit and it's okay to feel the way I'm feeling. If this carries on for a long time, then maybe I'll think about, seeking, professional help. But for me, it was just like, yeah, I'm just going to tackle this on. I kind of grew up with a strong willpower and I was just like, yeah, if I can't face this, then it's going to be a rocky road after this. And so it was kind of just like sink or swim, right? Like you're either going to make it happen or you're not. And I chose to make it happen.
Amazing. You talk about willpower. Would you say that was always there? Or that kind of morphed over time in terms of that perseverance and just getting through something really difficult?
I think that was always kind of there. I think just from growing up in a very competitive environment, whether it was sports or music, resilience was instilled in me because of sports and because of music at a competitive and young age. That's kind of all I really knew at that time. If you're not grinding these things that you're trying to accomplish, you're not doing it the right way. And like, even if it feels like it sucks and you don't want to do it, you still got to do it. Yeah, that was like sports. I feel like a lot of like my integrity and a lot of my character comes from my sports development and how I was able to navigate team playing, failure as an athlete. I played baseball. That was the sport that I played. And like, it's one of the only sports where if you're under 50% of anything, you're doing really good. If you were shooting less than 50% from the free throw line in basketball, chances are you're probably not going to be a professional player unless you're someone like Shaq or something like that who has amazing attributes elsewhere. In baseball, if you're batting 300, which is equivalent to 30%, that's a failing grade. Like that is like you're literally battling failure all the time. And so that was like something for me that I feel like I've been able to deal with failure and deal with hiccups and bumps in the road because of that. And just like knowing that it's a numbers game and that you always have to continue pushing forward because, that one time that you do win, it's going to make up for all the times that you lost and all the L's that you took.
Sounds like you learned a lot from having gone through those experiences and they really shaped you. What's advice that you would give to someone or other people going through similar struggles or just going through struggles at all from what you've learned having gone through those experiences?
The one thing that I've always had in my life that I've been fortunate enough to have is mentors. That's one thing I've always been very adamant about is having close mentors. I've had sports mentors, I've had musical mentors, I've had business mentors. When you have an authoritative figure that you look up to that can really guide you and help you make decisions, especially when they're very crucial life decisions, it's always great to have someone in your corner that has experience. All the stages of my life, I've always had a mentor, and sometimes you outgrow your mentor and you have to move on to someone else because as you're growing and as you're learning, you're accumulating more knowledge. And at a certain point, you need to have a mentor who is smarter than you and has more experience than you. And, this is natural. As you continue to build your database of knowledge, you're going to eventually seek more. I know it sounds so cliche, but like the moment you stop seeking knowledge is like when you become at a standstill, right? Like you're no longer growing. And with anything, man, if it's music, if it's your career, don't stop itching for that new thing. With music specifically, I'm always interested in the new gear. I'm always interested in the new music that's coming out. I'm always interested in the new trends, the way people are releasing music, the way people are packaging their content. That type of stuff like really inspires me. If you get stuck in a standstill with your inspiration in life, with your creativity, I always say that like do something different. Do something that's out of the norm. If I ever get in like ruts and stuff like that, I will go do something athletic, go on a hike, something that, you know, forces my body to be physically engaged. And that works for me. It kind of gives my body nostalgia. It gives my brain a time to be separate from my creativity and give myself time to think. And then when I come back to my creative space, I feel refreshed. I feel new. I feel like I can, you know, take on the world. It's like people that work out in the morning, they say like, oh, you have amazing energy after you work out, and you have amazing energy for the rest of the day, whether that's your career, whether that's your friendships, relationships. It could be anything. You just have to find something that fuels your creativity.
Would you say there's an importance to the order of that? Like if someone feels they don't have that, but they want to be creative, how should they go about pursuing that?
Do it till you can't do it no more. Literally force yourself to do the thing. If you never try to write, you can't confirm that you actually have writer's block. And so it's like, you just got to try it. You got to do it and keep doing it and keep doing it until you hit a standstill. And if it's a technical standstill or a knowledge like standstill, then go on YouTube, hit up your mentor, or pay for a class, you know, so that you gain that knowledge, so that that roadblock, that standstill is no longer there. And every time you get at a standstill, look at it and analyze the situation. Is this a technical thing? Is this a knowledge thing? Or is this just me not having the creative capacity for it? And if it's the creative capacity for it, then that's when you have to start to realize, okay, I need to have something that fuels this creativity. Where can I draw from this? And it's sad to say, sometimes you need something tragic in your life to happen. You lose a friend, you lose a lover. When you go through dark times, you can kind of pull out these like weird emotions and feelings that are tricky to navigate. But at the same time, as humans, we all feel the same things. Like at one point in our lives, we all probably experience anxiety. We probably all experience shyness. We probably experience insecurity in some form. We all experience these ugly emotions that we don't like to talk about. And sometimes you just got to face those head on and find something that allows you to express that, whether that's through conversation, you know, like if you're a talker, talk with someone. If you're a writer, write with someone. If you're through reading, you know, I'm personally not a reader, but I have tons of friends who love to read, and that's like their escapism.
Well, I love how you mentioned just doing the work, like putting the wheels in motion. I'm a big fan of the quote, the best way to write a book is writing 2 crappy pages a day.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to apply that in my life with regard to whatever creative pursuit that I'm doing. Just do the thing and maybe something will just emerge.
Yeah. Taking that first step, that's always the daunting part. When you're trying to tackle something new, it always feels like it's such a bigger task than what it is. We could be cynical and we could talk ourselves out of doing something so easily, right? We could always find an excuse to not do something. You know, like it could literally be anything. It's like, oh, laundry. Okay, I'm going to go do my laundry instead of whatever thing you're trying to deal with. Once you take that first step and you do it, then you're like, why was I avoiding this so long? Like, this is so easy. And you're like, I should have handled this a long time ago.
Yes, I know that life. Very fresh in my mind. How do you feel about doing some rapid fire?
Super down.
What's your favorite item under $100?
Favorite item under $100? I'm a nicotine fiend, so probably anything with nicotine.
Anything with nicotine. Okay, you might have answered the second one too. How about under $10?
Oh, under $10? Whew, yeah, probably a vape still.
What's the first thing you do when you walk into the house?
Oh, take off my shoes. I have a Korean roommate, so there's no shoes in the household.
No shoes in the household. Would there be shoes in the household if you had no roommate?
Probably not. I actually like it. I like no shoes.
I like no shoes too. If you went to prison, would you focus on physical fitness or reading books?
Probably physical fitness.
What's something you could eat for a week straight?
Sushi.
Good choice. What movie have you watched the most?
Ooh, this would either have to be Gladiator or Braveheart.
If you had to pick one, I don't want to make you pick one. I don't like picking
It would probably be Braveheart.
Braveheart, okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever used the word snazzy in a sentence?
Yes.
Amazing. What would be your choice of superpower if you could pick one?
Oh man, that's tough. I think I would want like teleportation.
Teleportation?
Yeah.
Would you teleport to anywhere in particular?
I would probably do like Mount Everest just because I know I would never climb it, but I would love to say that I went to the top of Mount Everest.
And then just teleport back.
Yeah, exactly. Just like put my flag there and leave. Yeah.
If you were guaranteed the correct answer to one question, what would you ask?
What is the purpose of life?
What's the purpose of life? If you could make a documentary about anything, what would it be?
Moss.
Moss?
Moss. Yeah. Moss.
Like
it's so
MOSS?
Yeah, moss. It's so fascinating. There's so many different types of moss out there, and it's like it's such a big part of our ecosystem that is also like very small. Sorry, I'm gonna nerd out. Yeah, moss. Moss.
Do I need to learn all about moss now?
I mean, moss is important to our ecosystem. It's just like fungi. It's a crucial part of most of our ecosystems. Like,
I feel like we need to link that as well. We need to get on this moss knowledge.
Yeah, I have some cool moss articles that I could link you with.
Oh yeah, thank you in advance. Besides moss, what makes you smile?
Ooh, anime, good food, and music.
Hell yeah.
I'm pretty simple.
Well, thank you very much, Famburglar. This has been a pleasure. I'm so grateful to have spent this time with you. Where can people go to follow you?
All of my ats are the Famburglar, so it's at the Famburglar. SoundCloud, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Bandcamp. Famburglar.bandcamp.com.
All right, we will link it below. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm super excited to see where this goes.
Yeah.
I'll see you.